Okay, next lean manufacturing lesson, Genchi-Genbutsu, or going to the Gemba. We've all heard the stories of the Japanese sensei that drew a circle on the floor and had the American manufacturing manager stand in the circle and simply watch a process for a while. No talking, no looking at a cell phone, no electronic devices, just simply stand there and watch. Great stories. I've had some experiences along those lines. Myself, the question is always this: is that process, honestly, as impactful as the stories? My personal experience, yes, more impactful than the stories. And here's a perfect example of that. Working in a big factory, we were building heavy equipment. I was a VP probably back in 86, 87, somewhere in that area. We had a giant paint booth and we only painted 2 different colors, blue and gray. That was the only 2 colors that we had to switch out. But the process of switching them out, going from one color to the next, was time consuming enough that we wanted to do it as few times as possible so we could keep that paint line running. The paint line was far and away the biggest constraint inside the organization, and if we weren't meeting schedules, it was almost always because the paint line was slowing us down. So I inherited the paint line after many managers had inherited it, and I decided to put this process to work, and I went out and I just literally stood there. My manager's name was Joe, and Joe come over and he'd talk to me and, "What you doing, Mike?" And I said, not really sure, just kind of watching the paint line go. And so I'm watching it and it moves really slow, and there's a paint booth and the guy paints it, and right in front of that there's an area where there's a couple of guys who hang the parts before they get to the paint booth, and then they go through a big oven and go through a cooling process and come around this side and get unloaded and off to the assembly areas, right? Very simple paint line. And so as I'm standing there for a while, finally Joe walks up and to check on me, and I finally ask him, "Hey Joe, how fast does this line move?" And he says, 3 feet a minute. I said, okay. "And how long does it take to switch over colors?" He says, I said, "I notice you leave a gap in the line. And when that gap gets to the paint booth, then everybody switches their colors. The line keeps moving, and there's just a gap, that allows for that time." He says, 45 minutes to change over colors. I said, okay. And so I stood there for a while longer, and I'm watching this process, and after a while I'm thinking, 3 feet a minute times 45 minutes, so a little under 150 feet, 135 foot gap would be 45 minutes. And I'm thinking that through, and then I'm looking at the line, and I go measure my gap, and it's almost twice that long. "Hey Joe, have you noticed that the gap is twice as long as the amount of time that you need to switch over the booth?" He looked at that for a minute and he said, "Really? How do you know?" And I said, "I just measured it. You said it's 3 feet a minute." And I said, "Well, 3 feet a minute and it takes 45 minutes. That'd be 135 feet. So I just measured it off, and you get, almost twice that." "Well, I'll be darned," he said. Well, we need to get that taken care of." So the team gets together and they talk about it and they get that taken care of. And then I noticed on these hooks, the hooks are 3 feet apart on the paint line. And we'll take small parts, this big, and we'll hook them on one of the hooks. Then we'll hook one on one of the other hooks. And so, me just standing there again, I'm looking at that. And in my mind, I start imagining, well, what if we had a rail that we built out of metal, some sort of steel, that went almost clear to the floor. We had each bar maybe a foot apart, maybe less, 8 inches apart, and it had 2 hooks, so it hooked into both those hooks, and then you could put 100 parts on instead of 1 part on each hook, 100 parts between 2 hooks, or 50, something. And so Joe comes by, and I said, "Hey Joe, what do you think about that?" And he says, "Well, that sounds like a great idea if you can get it done." I said, "What do you mean if I can get it done?" He says, "Well, if you go down to the R&D department, the guys that would make us something like that, they'll tell you that they're backed up a year or 2 on projects and that they can't build that for you right now." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I go walking down there, and the guy down there, his name's Heinrich, and I said, "Heinrich, got an idea." And I drew it out on a piece of paper, and I said, "I was just down at the paint line doing this." And he looks at that and he says, "Well, Mike," he says, "I'd love to help you out." He says, "But we got a lot of things going on. We'd have to put a bunch of things aside if I was to stop and do that for you right now." So I said, "No, so." stop whatever you're doing and build this thing for me. And he goes, but Mike, you understand? I'm like, whoa, now we're talking instead of building. Stop now and build the thing. Let me get my welding gloves on, I'll help you. So Heinrich goes, okay, you're the VP. And we walk over and we cut some parts and, I don't know, would it take us 30 minutes, 40 minutes or so? We had it built and then we run down there and I said, come on with me, Heinrich, so he could come see what we were doing, right? Because this had to be very frustrating for Heinrich. But the deal is, you guys thought this was going to be a lesson in Genchi-Genbutsu and go into the Gemba. It's not the lesson here, is it? I think you guys are already following me. We're talking about the lesson we were talking about in the video before, right? I'm the VP. We had something that we needed to get done. And sure, Genchi-Genbutsu, going to the Gemba, just standing and watching was a part of this. But the other big part of it is, I'm not just some middle manager they put in the company and gave me a title like Lean Champion and said, go do Lean. No, I'm the guy who could walk down there and say, I don't care what you're doing. Stop, do this, we're going to fix it, we're going to fix it now. Guess what? Between changing that gap, doing these grids, bringing Heinrich down so he could see what we were doing, so he had some satisfaction going, I see why you stopped me. This is really good stuff. We're taking the biggest issue this company's ever had, and we're solving it in just a few days, so it's not the biggest issue anymore. In fact, it's not even an issue. And I get to be part of that. That's right, Heinrich, come on, And at first I had to be, a little bit of a tough manager guy. But then bring them along. Let everybody see. Joe and all of his guys, and everybody started seeing, oh, I get it. And yes, it did start from just standing there. But again, I'm going to make a point. Do not say you're trying Lean. Do not say your company tried Lean because you took some people and you sent them out for some training. Do not say you tried Lean because you put a couple of people in a middle management position. You didn't try Lean, right? The only way Lean's going to work is if your leadership leads it. And that means you're going to have to do what I did. You're going to have to do what every other Lean manager, every other successful company in the world does when they implement Lean. You got to start from the top. Get out there, put your electronics down and stand and look. Absolutely part of it. But the next part is you're there to clear roadblocks. As the senior management team, you're there to help get things done. You're there to pull people in and get them excited about the process and fix the important things in the company that need to be fixed so people go, hey, look what we just did. You know what the next biggest issue is? It's this thing over here. Let's go jump on that one and do the same thing. Build that excitement, get things moving. Now the tools will start to make sense to you. The philosophies and methodologies will support you along that path, but you got to go do it. Okay, we got one more video coming for you. Hang with us. Talk with you soon.